Imagine the fate of the world rests in your hands from how good your dick is.
Man.
Like, that is such pressure.
What you talking about, bro? Pressure.
I said, man, that's just a Tuesday. That's just
pressure. What you talking about? Hey, Josh, you got to step up with confidence, baby. With the word on the line, I'm gonna need you to be confident, brother. I don't need no sort of wishy-washy. I don't know. No, motherfucker, I'm gonna need you to put it down. Welcome to Whiskey Wisdom. I'm your host, Shaq.
And I'm your host, Nahum.
This week, got one of our compadres in. He is new to the cast. Everybody give him a nice little warm welcome. Josh, welcome to the cast, baby.
Hey, what's up? Glad to be here. Oh, yeah. Long-time listener, first-time guest.
Well, which I thank you for, because you know this probably breaks some of our rules here, but not as many of our guests frequently listen or routinely listen as you would think. It's a little insulting.
Really?
You know, they just kind of listen to their own episodes.
Yeah.
Ah, dang.
That's some shit.
We have some selfish people on.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But we picked them, so maybe this is our fault.
Ultimately, the proverbial buck falls on us now. But anyway, Josh, if you want, you can get a folks like a quick little intro as far as how you know us and what you've been up to for like the past 6 months or so.
Oh, true. Yeah, so I met both of you actually through our mutual friend Leon. Everything met him in college. He was a friend first and a resident my senior year. I was an RA. And yeah, he just kind of brought me around you guys and the frat, everything. I thought y'all was cool, and we kicked it a couple times. Like, I know, Shaq, I think I really met you. Because we had seen each other, I think, for a while before, but then I really met you at his birthday party. If you remember that a while back, where we did that escape room.
Yeah.
And then Nahum, I actually met you when I think we were all back up, near Chicago. You came bowling with us that one time.
Oh, yeah. We started hanging around a bit more. Still out when we were in the burbs.
Right.
Yeah.
In the burbs. But yeah. And so, yeah. I thought you guys was cool and stuff. We all thought the same, Yeah, shameless plug. But then for the last 6 months, man, I just been working. We're trying to be good at my job, failing at it mostly.
We'll edit that out, Justin. You can't be saying that on here. This goes out to the public.
Tried to warn you. I tried.
What do you do?
Oh, so I actually am an insurance agent, working with the elderly, help them get on Medicare plans.
Oh.
So yeah, it was very, very cool, very interesting, learning a lot about insurance, specifically health insurance, because that is the most confusing beast. I mean, healthcare in general is confusing, but just trying to understand all of that and the ins and outs and the rules and stuff that people don't know and everything. So, yeah, that's cool.
I was blissfully unaware until I needed healthcare.
Yep.
And then it was a very, I don't know it all yet, but then it was a very hard wake up call.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you guys ever have any insurance questions, please hit me up.
You just told us you
That you're bad.
Hey, that was the elderly. That's the elderly.
Oh, you're right, but I'm young and spry.
It's different. It's different. Medicare is not the same as like all the other insurance.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
the other-
sad for them,
Yeah.
but personally, fantastic.
Yeah, with the Medicare, it's you got to deal with the government, and oof.
Yes.
Question. Okay, so this second one is from a radio show that I listen to the radio in the mornings, and on it they I like the radio. We have segments,
Segments.
Yes. Yeah. But anyways, yes. I listen to the radio in the morning, and they have a segment called Stay or Go. And on said segment, people will call in and bring up different issues they may be having with their partner. And but as you would imagine, the whole topic is either to help them move past the issue, or break things off in a relationship. So one of the ones that I recently heard was interesting, both because of the conversation and because of the timing of it for these people. And then the only downside to this right now, or for this episode, is we don't also have a woman, which may change it up for some, but also it's just be a nice rounded out part to it. But the question is, do you believe in soulmates? Is there a problem if your partner does or doesn't? Would you want them to lie about it? And the last one is crucial for this particular instance. And the reason I say that is because when it came out on the radio, the particular situation was the guy calling in and saying that he was having a conversation with his fiance. They are already engaged. I can't remember exactly how far away they are from the wedding, but fairly close enough that obviously they're engaged, and he's they're moving there. They're getting to that destination. Somewhere in the conversation that they're having, the guy expresses himself in such a way that he's like, well, I'm just love her so much, thankful for her, all this stuff, blah blah blah, whatever the case that the guy was saying, for having found and being with my soulmate. And the fiance responded something along the lines of the effect that, like, she loves him, and happy to get married, do all the stuff, but she doesn't believe in soulmates. And maybe whatever went out beyond that. So it seems like they kind of, the conversation got wrapped up and everything, but obviously it festered enough that the guy calls a radio station to kind of help talk him through, or like, I just need to work this out of me. I don't know if someone would really, / what happens with them, like if they would really call off a whole engagement because their partner doesn't believe in soulmates. I feel like that might be something that you get to before the engagement, but I suppose that's a separate question. So the timing of it and the whole lying part of my question is because, I think it does make a bit of a difference if, like, they tell me that on day one versus, like, we're about to get married. Like, we're at the altar. Like, it's okay if you don't believe in soulmates, but maybe, like, don't kill my vibe right now. So just those parts of the question. The lying is maybe a little bit more situational and depending on the timing. But yeah, I was curious on that, what y'all believe on it. I definitely became curious because, as y'all know, and as I talked with you a lot, Jack, the faith and my beliefs kind of play a big part in how I live my life. And there is a common saying that now I question whether or not it's well understood or well used by the vast community and church and the religion. But there is a saying of there being like an ideal pairing for you. Like the saying roughly translated is like the good Lord has an ideal pair or match for you, basically something like that. Mm-hmm. And I've never really questioned it. I've just been like, yeah, okay, because of how strongly I believe in like the commitment and marriage and family and all that goes with that. Never really questioned it, but the idea that like there's only one person that you can make things work out with is kind of an antithesis to that. And I don't believe necessarily that there is only one person that you can work things out, level, do all this. So I'll get to that in a little bit, but I guess like y'all's opening thoughts, or at least opening with the question, do you believe in soulmates? Oh, and Josh, I'm not sure, I guess maybe at what point or where you maybe want to share, you feel like what you were mentioning beforehand, like you relate to that part. We can also end up opening with, or start opening with that, depending on how you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm gonna get to the original question a little bit later. I'm gonna try to flow through it. So I'm gonna start with the fact that there's 7 billion people in the world, right? It is just statistically possible that there is one person for everyone. You know, there's someone out there for you. In my personal experience, it has not been the case. But I think that to some extent that is true. Just purely speaking, just off the numbers, right? Mm-hmm. So whether or not someone believes in it, to me, is kind of subjective in the way, like, for example, for you said that it's kind of in your religion, right? That you.
It's something I've heard, but like I can't. I for the life of me, when I was thinking about this question, I haven't heard or like can remember of like any verse where it talks about soulmates. I just think about, and I meant to ask my parents and like the different church people all this, but like I can't think of any part that it does specifically talk of soulmates. I know there's a common refrain that's said, and like when I was thinking about this question, I was like, I wonder if that's just like us as humans that kind of like started adding / kind of twisting words around.
Little sprinkled that in there.
Yeah, like kind of like you know, the whole commitment, the marriage, all this like becoming. There's like a lot of it about like, you know, you're married, you're committed to each other, you become one, all that, it's in there. And like I just kind of wonder if like all this sprinkling and nice words and everything like that got sprinkled in with the part that like is actually in the Bible, and then it just became soulmates because you become one. And you know, like the good Lord something like, that's not what I said. I just said y'all have to commit to each other.
Right. Okay.
But
I got you. Okay. So then, yeah, with that, so I mean, I don't know, this one's tough. I would say yes, I do believe in soulmates. Then, just kind of, if not just to give myself hope,
okay,
that there is someone out there that is your perfect match and that you are meant to be with for the rest of your life. Now, whether or not you find that person depends on a lot of factors. It depends on timing, depends on the people you're around, your circle, a little bit of how you grew up too, and also that other person that is supposedly out there for you is also going through life, everything. And so can you time it and perfectly where you all meet up at the same time. You both are in the same headspace to where you realize, hey, this is my soulmate.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think they do exist. I just think there's a lot of other factors that you would kind of need to talk about for that to go into it.
Like us, we would have to talk about to like really look at the question, or you mean like in the relationship they would really have to like?
I would say in the relationship, just kind of relating back to what the dude called in about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's just a lot that you have to kind of discuss, when going into it. So it's okay if you do, and it's okay if you don't. In my personal opinion, but I would say that I do.
Okay. Shaq, anything to add with it to that, or mine, or your own?
No, I don't. So
we could just wrap it up here. This is a pretty good spot.
Cut it.
I think that, yes, that according to math, there is at least one that is compatible with you at a higher level. I'll say that. Mm-hmm. I don't think that there's such thing as just a perfect, non-resistant kind of relationship to have, to where everything's easy breezy, beautiful. Everything's, smooth sailing type shit that people tend to try to find within a person as a quote unquote soulmate, right? Oh, you're perfect. Everything's great. Blah, blah, blah. We will never fight. We will never have any arguments. That doesn't exist. I think that there is a large group of people that are compatible enough for you, but said work is required to make that compatibility work. That's like saying,
yes.
We are going to put Michael Jordan on the Chicago White Sox. Jordan's a great player, but he'd be much better off on the Bulls.
Yes.
So, but then even on the Bulls, right, where he won 6 chips, it was a questionable relationship the entire time, even though it was ultimately productive for both parties. So,
with, depending on stories and conspiracies, a 2-year break because of
when you
some differences.
When you took a 2-year sabbatical.
Yeah,
but
sabbatical.
But I believe that there are quite a few people that we could end up with, that we would end up with a very fulfilling and happy life. I don't think that it's reduced to one. I think that by reducing it to one, you end up ignoring possibilities that would have been one of the better fits, because we think that it's supposed to be completely seamless and easy. I think that a lot of people have probably
like something's just supposed to hit you and be like, "This is it."
Right. I think
so. You're saying someone can become your soulmate if you all work at it.
Rather, I think that they already are, but it requires work in order to unlock that connection that you're looking for. I think that a lot of people have probably given up on one of their soulmates for the sake of a grass is greener kind of situation. That, from a romanticized point of view, thank you, Disney, that a lot of folks think that it's supposed to be, we're going to hop off over into the sunset. It's going to be great. Versus, the arguments that naturally people have as they evolve and learn new things about themselves, learn new things about their environment and everything else like that. But I also think that our soulmates change based upon the phase of life that we're in. I think that when you're, in your late teens, early 20s, then there's probably someone within that age group that you would deem as a soulmate for that initial, like, starting journey of your soul, for for the sake of keeping it consistent. for the initial starting point of your soul, that's your soulmate at that point until you evolve past that, and they're no longer your soulmate.
So, I guess putting that together with the stuff that you were talking about, like working at it, is it your belief then, the idea that like, okay, you pick someone earlier, and they can be your soulmate, for the rest of life, but you have to work to make sure that like they stay with you in all these stages?
I think that there are, within the natural progression of a person, the things that I liked when I was 20, I may not have such an affinity for now that I'm 28.
Mm-hmm.
And you would have to get incredibly lucky to find someone that's evolving in the same direction at the same rate that you are. And that even when they evolve past their likes and dislikes into new ones,
Mm-hmm.
that they somehow still align with yours. That would be crazy. Now, I think that ultimately what ends up happening is it is a positive and a negative. People that hold on to the soulmate kind of mentality can either hold on to someone that is like detrimental to them, that they no longer get any true benefit of, because they believe that, well, I just have to keep working and pushing through this, even though their lives are completely divergent. Or they scrap something that could be great because they think that it's supposed to be easy breezy beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that a soulmate exists. I think that multiple do. But
now,
the distinguish of when certain people are is the difference.
okay, now this is going to move a little bit away from the question, but I'm hoping we can either put it off to the side, or I think we'll still be able to find our way back afterwards easier. But you have expressed interest, or like the hopes of like, family. I do believe, if I'm recalling everything correctly, marriage and everything's in there. How does that kind of reconcile with that? Because then it's kind of like, well, yeah, like we can do this, but it's kind of, it at least at the moment right now, it seems to me kind of yeah, we can do this, but there's an expiration date that's going to be coming down a way as well. Now, I think a lot of people, not just because of religion or faith or any of that, but just society and because of marriage and all that, think of that as being like, yeah, the exit is death.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you kind of then reconcile that, or like, what would you say to the person you're interested in if they were to ask you this question, and you gave your response kind of like that? Whether or not they believe in soulmates, it kind of just seems like you're like, look, we're good until life's like we're not until we ate, which is fair. But
well, look, I think that first of all, hey, look, this is gonna sound kind of cold and crass, but okay. What is it? 54% of marriages end in divorce right now, anyway, right?
Yeah.
So
facts?
Flip a coin type shit.
Mm-hmm.
Are we gonna work or are we not? But I think that there comes a point to where a compromise has to happen, meaning that understanding that your progression now changes into your like duty. So if you're married and you have kids, then your progression is now second to making sure that your kids are raised properly. So even though you may feel like you can evolve further into a person evolve as a person with someone else as a better fit, you owe it to your kids to make sure that the situation that you're in currently works and maintains properly. If there are no kids that are involved, then I believe in the initial concept, to which I said earlier, which is that there comes a point to where you ultimately outgrow each other,
Mhm.
or one person outgrows the other person and feels like they're
Mhm.
kind of dragging dead weight. And the way around it is one, to either never get married, or two, to find someone that, may not give you 100%, oh my God, I'm so blah, 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 but gives you 80. And you're like, okay.
So, like, the understanding has to be there beforehand.
Yeah.
Okay, I can get behind that, yeah.
Okay. So, I think that for a lot of families, they end up self-destructing because they're trying to chase these, like, ideal kind of, this is who I could be with kind of vibes.
Mm-hmm.
Versus now where I'm at now is a lot better than most.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just gonna chill right here and put my ego aside. So, yeah, that would be my answer. Is that if it's marriage with kids, then you have a duty to serve your kids to make sure that they're raised properly, and you have a duty to whoever your partner is to make sure that partnership works. If you are without kids and you're married, then I feel like that's dramatically different as far as your allegiance. I don't know, that sounds
Or
terrible.
like your
debt? I don't know. Your whatever to that person.
Responsibility?
Yeah.
Where are you looking for?
That, like, your own happiness kind of outweighs that still.
Okay.
right.
Gotcha.
And obviously, not that like it's to be completely thrown away or not considered, but it does take a back seat.
Yeah.
Josh, yeah.
Just real quick, I just want to counter what Shaq said with, like, you have a duty to your kids. You do have that duty to your kids to make sure that they grow up correctly, but there are situations where, sometimes staying in a relationship is hurtful to the kids.
Yeah.
At the same time, like, staying in that and then you acting the way you act. If you do act that way, they're seeing stuff that is maybe not so good stuff for kids to see. So
Fair.
maybe sometimes, separating is
Yes.
kind of the best thing to do, and that co-parenting can work.
That being said, I would, and Shaq obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that would almost then maybe reinforce his point then, because in that moment when that happens, you kind of look and said, look, us being together isn't for the best interest of the kids. So we separate, which means the kids are still taking priority because we're doing this, again, because of the kids. And then we separate because we don't work anymore, like we've outgrown each other, whatever the case is. Then
Right.
I kind of look at that as being like, well,
there is a key difference between, I have a troublesome spouse at home, which for one, I would say, one of the probably the most important decision that you'll make in your life is who you decide to make babies with. So I would be very clear and clean with vetting who the fuck you're making babies with. If you're making babies with, Pookie and Ray Ray, but you expect them to behave like, a fucking white collar lawyer, like, that's not gonna, like, huh? You already knew what the fuck he was before you got in with it. You know what I mean? So do proper vetting before you make a kid. And then if for some reason, there's some mental breakdown, some mental shift that happens, and yes, the priority of the kids take rule to where it's like, look, kids are not in a good environment. They're not growing up well. We got to split, as like Nahum said. But that's different than saying, hey, everything's smooth at home, but whenever you out working, this like pool boy is hot as fuck. So I kind of want to bang him. And I might want to do something with the pool boy because I think that he makes me feel more alive than you do. Those are two different scenarios. One is I'm doing it for my own happiness because I think that this person makes me feel more alive than you do. Versus for the sake of the kids, we need to get away from each other because this is not a good environment for them to grow up in.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean?
See,
because in the case of like everything at home is smooth but it's boring, but but this person makes me feel more alive and like exciting. Whether it be I'm going to work and banging my secretary, or I'm away from home and you're banging the pool boy. Those
are Shaq's top porn searches, by the way, people. He either pictures himself as the pool boy or with the secretary.
True.
Hey,
True. Top two kinks.
Usually she's a redhead.
Hey, relax. Relax. God damn. But yes, I think that a lot of marriages don't end because of the like arising of a verbally or physically abusive kind of situation. I think that it arises out of the spark falling away, and then someone else has more fire, or puts more fire into that person than their spouse does, and then they're like, yeah, you know what, maybe I should go over there on some like grass is greener type shit. But the position that puts the kids in is unnecessary. Now you have step parents. Now you have the main parent that may or may not be able to see the kids. There's so many more variables now that make the kids' lives more like complicated.
I mean, I think even with those, while I do agree there's more variables, I think even in all those, a lot of people still follow. And not to say that I'm necessarily 100% with it, but I think a lot of people still do kind of follow this pattern or this rule that you set up, Shaq, where it's like, it is what it is till it ain't. And people are just kind of going along there. And then when the kids, it's just whether or not they want to keep doing this, even if they are married. Because I say married a lot, and a part of that was just because of the kind of questions that happened on my own, the actual question of the radio segment. But it's just a relationship. And so they're in this relationship, and that's the kind of the thing. So long as they're good with it, they stay in there. The kids come in, and like you said, kids now take the top spot, with the other one about like whether or not they're happy and all this taking number 2, let's say. And whatever problem comes, it gets run through first the filter of the kids for the most part. Whether it's because, they're so unhappy that like now they're living at home and they're it's not even any kind of abuse. There's no kind of harm. There's no kind of like, toxic environment or anything like that. It's just the fact that the kids are now literally living with parents that don't love each other and clearly don't love each other. It doesn't have to be bad. It's just the kids just know that they're there because of the kids. And I've seen it in those cases where it's like, okay, it's not the usual picture of like we're hurting the kids or this is bad for the kids, but it is still best for the kids that they see their parents happy with people they want to be with, or with people that they're lusting or whatever, but they see their parents happy and like reconciled as best they can for the kids. Like it's a quick swap, but it's only because it is for the kid. And then, it's a quick moment where it goes then parent being happy or all this is going to make the kids more better or happier, more comfortable or whatever the case is. I think I see that a lot more where it's like, these rules of kind of like the kids make it become the top priority is the case. And even if it's a toxic environment, even if it's just like, look, we're just not happy together, so we need to split up. It's a situation where they're like, there is a quick moment where they need to inverse because them inversing will make the kids better.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I still see that happening.
But then aren't there like not situations where like they both can be a priority kind of at the same time? Like, is there ever situations where like...
I think so, but I think those would then be the people that are like, look, yeah, we just didn't work out. Like I think those would be like the good ones that I was maybe talking about. We're like, look, we just didn't work out, and we weren't happy. And yes, the kids, like, this is rough on the kids, but we think maybe they're wrong, but like they're like, we think it would have been rougher if we had been like in this, like living in this household, pretending to love each other and all this, but we were really just giving like bare minimum. You know, we were like, it's Mother's Day or their birthday or something. We're like, happy birthday, you're the greatest, all this, and like the kids know. Whereas, you know, you'll have some kids that they are children of divorce or things like that, or infidelity or stuff like that. Well, actually, not infidelity, but even in those cases, and they're like, look, we understood what happened. We made our peace with it. I'm not saying we would have wanted it to happen, but like we understood that it went down. And I have both parents that I know still love me, that didn't drag me into this. And while it's not necessarily always the same, I have, let's say, 2 new people in my life that are making both my parents happy and are really, you know, taking care of me the best they can, loving me, you know, like their own, all that. So like, I do think there are cases where it can all work out. And those are kind of like, mind you, not common, but some cases where people would be like, you know, they were kind of both equal priorities, my happiness and my kids' well-being, because they were able to work out, or one, you know, taking care of mine took care of theirs.
I see.
In a similar way, not for splitting up, but in a similar way where, if you've ever heard, we talked about this a long time too, where some parents were like, look, I need to make sure we still have our date nights or like our time for intimacy or whatever, because it does not benefit the kids if we get so stuck into parenting mode that we don't care about each other as partners.
Right.
So like, it is in the kid's best interest that I take my wife out on a date and sleep with her. It's all for the kids.
So I don't get anything out of that whatsoever.
Yeah, you know, it's
all for the kids.
As Shaq would say, it is my obligation and duty to do that.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, Josh.
The world depends on it.
Hold on. So Josh, so you do believe in soulmates, or you don't?
I do.
Okay. Did you want to give your example, or like, was there like some other reason as to why you do?
Yeah.
Because you started off with a mathematical analysis saying,
right,
you know, at least 1 out of 7 billion, which yes, I agree with, but I would expand that number to at least 100 out of 7 billion minimal. But
100 out of 7.
But go on.
Okay. So the reason why I say that is because I have seen so many people who get married from like their high school sweetheart, or let me take it even further back, from their childhood like friend. Mm-hmm. Now, did they express interest in each other maybe at first? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, and they found each other later. Let's just kind of get into what y'all were saying, like, if you all are growing at the same time period for your age group, does it work? You know, it's just kind of like that. So they can find each other later, but at the same time, you've known that person for a long time. You probably know their ups, you know their downs. So when you do all finally get together, you know what you're getting into. You know what they've been to, what they've been through. They know what you've been through. Yet you're still agreeing to enter into this partnership. So that's why I'm kind of thinking of like where the soulmate conversation comes in. You know,
because so that's like it's all kind of, you go into it knowing and everything's still, and you go into it knowing everything, and it's still kind of like works where like everything's accepted, matching, or like can come together. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. So oddly enough, I think that touches a little bit with where my question or my hesitance was because of the whole faith part of it, and like when I was bringing up Christianity and beliefs and marriage and all that, because I think it is I was telling you, I was racking my brain, and like I don't believe there is any mention of soulmates. Like biblically, there is no mention of soulmates, but there's kind of like this false understanding or this wrong understanding that like there is one person for you. And I'm pretty sure that's because when like it talks about or the part that gets used a lot is in Spanish, it's called ayuda idónea, which is it directly translated is like ideal help. I think like people get mixed up in the idea that like ideal, and they're like, okay, so it's like this is the perfect, this is like the best. Whereas I think in the context of it all, it's just kind of like, look, there needs to be a pair or like a match to you when it was written. I think it's like all the creation thing, and it's like, you know, like there should be an equivalent to the whole like the atom and all that. So I think that's what it is. And it's not that like there's one. I think that the way that it's more meant to be, as opposed to kind of how it's sometimes commonly used, is that there isn't one specific person meant to be there, but you do like you can have one partner or like one. The choosing of the one person is what makes them the ideal one, because you're going into it together. Like you said, like, you know each other, you know the ups, the downs, you are fully informed and bear all to the person that you choose, and they still decide to like, to match with you or to partner with you. That is like what makes it the ideal person. So I hold it more in like, it's not the soulmate in the typical way that like there is one person on this planet that I'm supposed to find. I think I hold it more in the sense that it's like, you know, there are people that in me choosing them and putting in the work, like Shaq said, we do kind of become the ideal partner because we're open, we're communicative. They know about me. We agree on what we want and how to get there and all this stuff. And we become one by choice rather than like, because we're out here trying to like find which one it is.
Right.
Okay. And that's where I would say that you can grow. Not that you were saying you can't grow, Shaq, but like, that's where my whole thing of like, there is one, and you can take that one from like the point you decide to like all the way till the end. And I do think it's easier to grow with that person than I kind of understood you saying a moment ago. But it's because you are fully invested and like fully knowledgeable on this person. The fact that like you fully commit to this person is what makes it easier for you to together grow through together, because, you know, this is a very simplified analogy, but like if I'm going on a hike, like I'm not going to leave the person behind me just because they're slower. The whole point was that we were in this together. So I'm going to help you and you're going to help me. And I think in that sense, because you become fully committed to the person, like if it was a soulmate, like that is what makes it easier to move through life together.
Sure. But here's the understanding though now. Most people don't hold that mentality of, hey, you know, we're coming in with a soulmated up. Let's, you know, work on this for the foreseeable kind of vibes, right? Most people don't come in with that mentality. Most people come in with the, hey, does this puzzle piece go here? Okay, this puzzle piece go here.
I would say yes for now, but like later back in the day, I would say they did have more of that truth mentality.
Yes, I think that
dating. Are you calling? Oh, you're saying I'm old, Josh. Is this because of the radio? The radio has great segments, Josh.
Segments. That's insane to me. Segments. What?
It's not what I
This
meant.
motherfucker listening to people speaking through an antenna.
Hey, yo.
That's crazy.
They have the radio on the
yes,
internet
yes.
now.
Generally, people now date more for short-term pleasure than long-term planning.
Mm.
And then they try to extrapolate this short-term pleasure choice into a long-term planning choice when they are not the same. So while your initial choice for short-term pleasure may have been great for short-term pleasure,
He says it can go one way. It doesn't go.
it may be a terrible alignment for long-term planning. And the issue is that a lot of folks now try to transform the short-term pleasure pick into a long-term planning pick when those are two different archetypes. So I can understand, yes, being on a hike and saying, hey, I'm a marathon hiker, so I'm going to make sure that I don't leave whoever the fuck I'm hiking with behind. Versus someone that comes in with the mentality of, I'm a
speedrunner. We're doing this for time.
I am a hobbyist hiker. When I get to the top, I'm tired. I'm going home. I don't give a fuck if you here or not.
If you're still on your way up, well, you know,
whatever. But I'm out this motherfucker. And with, as I was saying earlier, with so many people falling for the grass is greener kind of mentality, with the options that we have available within dating apps, and everything like that, then it is much easier for a family that's in 1912 in a small town with 5 potential suitors for your daughter to be like, okay, are you going to go with John or are you going to go with Brett? Versus, you know, the 10,000 options that we have that we can swipe through in a week. And then trying to decide which one of those am I going to build a life with. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So, the mentality that we have now is not conducive to long-term building for most choices that are made, especially within our 20s.
Yeah, that's
So,
age group definitely does take another knock on that.
so even if
Yeah.
you have a soulmate, as I was saying, for that phase of your life within your 20s, and it could have been someone that still hit that soulmate mark in your 30s and still hit that soulmate mark in your 40s, because it's a certain metric that you kind of have to go past as far as compatibility in order to hit, you know, being soulmate worthy, highly compatible, okay compatible, non-compatible.
Okay. So you meant it more so like, not that like, well, maybe both. I took it first as like, okay, I have my soulmate, we're partnered up, and then I get to my 30s, and then like, oh shit, this one's better. Swap it out. But you meant it more so like, you know, in your 20s, it would have been this person.
Mm-hmm.
And then like you know, then y'all can take it from there. But in your 30s, you know, if you meet this person at your 30s, that wasn't it.
Yes. I think that compatibility is on a gradient, not a clear-cut yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, you know, that there's like certain levels to the game type shit. That if it's over, I'll say 85% compatibility, then it's like soulmate level. If it's from 70 to 85, then it's highly compatible. If it's from 50 to 70, then it's okay compatible. And if it's less than 50, then what the fuck are we doing? And I think that a lot of people tend to find someone that is in that high compatibility to soulmate range within their 20s. And it may be around 80% or 75%. And then they happen upon someone in the 30s where it's a 90%. Now you have a choice. Because you're still highly compatible with the person from your 20s, but the other person is at 90 now, and the person you were compatible with in your 20s is 75. That extra 15% to someone could mean the world, where they're like, yeah, this is a world of difference. I need to go with this 90% versus the 75%. But for some other folks, that 75% is enough. So kind of what, like Josh was saying, as far as people that are together since high school. You know, their compatibility is going to wane and waver as they grow. Sometimes it'll go up, sometimes it'll go down. But if it's within a range that they deem acceptable, then they'll stay. Mm-hmm. But if it goes, you know, but if they want something that's greater than the range that they're in, then they'll leave.
Mm-hmm. I've always thought that, like, especially for the like the people who grew up together, like the high school sweethearts or the like child friends and all that, even with like their people who left or like got separated with life and came back and all that. I've always thought that a lot of it ends up being, especially if they've always just been together, particularly in those moments, I feel like I understand both sides to it, that like you grow up and eventually you're like, wait, we're not compatible. And it's like, well, yeah, because you kind of just like took with it and ran and you never really bothered to question it. Or like there's someone else that all of a sudden you met that, you know, all you had to do was like, yeah, I fell, or like I'm together with the girl next door, but you know, the girl two houses down was more compatible. Eventually I'm going to run into the girl 2 houses down. So things like that. But at the same time, I do understand the idea, or I understand where it's that they become more compatible as they grow because you're living a life together that influences each other. You know, you care about what someone that you care for cares. You know, it's just the relationship, the dynamics of the relationship itself kind of feed in to it. So, I mean, I can see both happening where, you know, you grow and you become more compatible, or you grow and you become less compatible. And like you said, Shaq, it'll ebb and flow at different points. And it all just becomes a matter of whether or not you're comfortable, or you keep picking the same choice, mm-hmm. the same person at each of those times. Which is another way that I've heard about marriage. But I stress, just beyond marriage, if you want to take it just any relationship in general, you actively choose, you know, kind of every day you choose to be with that person, because you can cut it off at any point.
So is choosing to be with that person then like you just becoming complacent with where you are in your relationship, where you are in your life?
So this is where, okay, well, first of all, great question, Josh. Right now, this is where I mentioned the kids way earlier.
Right.
Is that even if your compatibility
for the conversation or with your with your dates?
Well, no, because with my understanding that I've already thought through it. You know what I mean? To where if I have, let's say, a 65% compatibility with my spouse, but we have 2 kids, you know, it ain't completely off the fucking rocker yet, but it ain't, you know, 90%. It ain't 85%, which may have been what it used to be when I got in it. But now that I got kids, you know, is my happiness as far as compatibility as important as it was when I was single? And I don't think it is. I think that, you know, you making that quote unquote choice that is complacent or stagnant for the sake of the growth of your kids is a sacrifice that is necessary to make. However, you know, without the kids, as I said, you don't really have that level of obligation anymore. If you're married, let's say for 3 years or something, compatibility drops to 60, 55. And then now you have to make the question, okay, well, you know, do I try to push through this for the sake of, you know, the vows that I made, or for the sake of my happiness and their happiness? Do we go separate ways? But that's also why I said that there's more than one soulmate that's available for you. I think that when a lot of people hear the word soulmate, they attribute it to 99% compatibility. The perfect person.
It's over 9,000.
the perfect person for you. Mm-hmm. That's why I said soulmate ranges from 85 to 100. There's so many more people that can fit between 85 and 100 versus between 99 and 100. And I think that a lot of people look for that 99 and ignore from 85 to 98 because they're like, but it's not 99 though. Even though that person you could live a long, fulfilling life with, potentially.
Right.
Well,
Like-
and go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, you get into the relationship, you're growing, and then all of a sudden you find out that they crumple their toilet paper. You know what I mean? Like,
So I think of those now at the beginning.
Get out of there.
At the beginning, would it have weighed a lot more? Of course, 100%. 100%. And Shaq actively just walked away from someone once because of that same reason.
True.
You know?
That was a legitimate interaction.
I'm not lying.
Yeah.
You think I do this for the sake of the show? No. We tell the truth here. That's the best part of it.
That was a legitimate interaction. I'm dead ass serious.
The conversation was going great. They were feeling each other.
God.
She was impressed by the podcast. He thought it was a great idea to bring up the topic and ask her. And ever since then, he doesn't ask people straight off. You know, I just wanted to. He gives it a day or two.
Right? Yeah. Give me something else to fall back on. You know, before you hit me with this.
But he found out. He got his answer. Didn't like the answer. Just walked
this
away.
Is all I know, and I can't.
Yeah, I just walked off the train. Got off. Won't even stop. I just got off.
Pulled the little thing. Doors open.
Got off. I don't need to be here no more.
Oh my god, that's so funny. I was joking.
No, yeah. No, that's a dead. I was not kidding. That was a situation I had.
No, but yeah, like I mean, I think at the beginning, yeah, sure, but it'll matter a little bit more. But in a little bit of time those together, yeah, like when Shaq says it's 100% true. At 85, from 85 to 98, you are still happy, and I think that hits. While that's still more about like what is. It's like, okay, you don't need it to be perfect. I don't think necessarily that also is about complacency. I get where it is. Like, I get how it gets to that. But I think there's also an understanding or like maybe a maturity that needs to be held where like this is. Let me get through it because it does sound like complacency, but it's like to say this is enough. And the 85 to like the 98, like you said, it is and can be enough. Because while it sounds like complacency, if you keep stuck in a mentality that like it needs to be better, where does it end? And Shaq and I had a conversation similar to this, I think last week, where it was just about like, like where does the desire stop? Because you meet 85, you lock it down with 85, and then you meet in 86, and then you're going to meet in, 87, and it keeps going. And you met in 99, and is there not going to be another 99? Or, in 100? And obviously, like, I've been still single on cuffing season, so who am I to say that 85 and up is just going to keep scrolling through? But the mentality of like, no, I'm being complacent. Let me step it up to like the next one that I meet. That's there. It's a very it's a bit of a dangerous mentality because while you may actually be more compatible, you are kind of being a bit complacent or you're settling. That doesn't mean you're not happy. It just means you're maybe like you're trying to get an easier ride or an easier like life or whatever the case, and that's not inherently bad. But when you become so willing to just toss anything aside because we're going to have something that's supposedly
right, that has the
better,
potential to be better.
Like that is where I think it becomes dangerous. And adding a little bit to that, particularly when there are kids per se, because Shaq has talked about it in the sense of also like the duty, and that's fair. But like, if I'm with my wife and she's a 90, and I run across a 95, one, the potential. Okay, sure, the potential is there, so that would be better. But even if you tell me that my relationship with the 95 is going to be better, even if there's a certainty into that, if I already have kids, there is a duty that's there. However, there is also happiness that comes from things beyond just me and my wife. So there's happiness that comes to me with my relationship with my kids and how they're coming up, how they feel about me, my interactions. This kind of like, while it's not necessary, this like Hallmark like family picture idea and all that, you know. So if I decide to leave my 90 wife and like our kids and all that, not necessarily leave them, but like I'm going to leave my wife and then I'm going to go with the 95 and we're going to try to do this whole amicable thing and all that so that my kids are still happy and all that. Like us, even just aside from duty, there's no guarantee that your happiness, if you decide to throw duty out the window, there's no guarantee that like your happiness is going to be better with the 95 than the 90 because you have other things that would affect it now. It's not just my wife. It's for my happiness. It's also my kids, like my relationship with my kids. Right. And so at that point, like, is it just being complacent to stay with my 90 because, you know, I mean, you can look at it that way, but also you can say no, because when you finally do all the math and the compatibility and all this stuff and the repercussions from this whole thing, like, sounds a little bit more analytical than I would like it. But like when you do the math and everything, when the dust settles, you're actually not, or you may not be happier because it wasn't just about your partner being your soulmate. There were now people that added to your happiness that had nothing to do with your partner. And to change that up also affects the happiness with the partner. The downside or the weird part of all that, Shaq, is tying all this together. The same thing goes to what I mentioned with the whole desire thing. By the same teachings or like within the faith and all that, with desire, with like spouses or like relationships, romance and all that, there is supposed to be an understanding that like this person could be perfect for you, but like the biblical understanding and the idea is they could be perfect for you, but your full happiness is not going to come from that person. It's not even going to come from yourself or anything you could desire or have. It just comes from the Lord and all that. So like the idea being your compatibility could be 100%, and that's still not going to be, let's say, enough. Which is an interesting thing that I didn't think about when we had the conversation about desire and how it's never enough, or how now applying it to a partner, there could always be someone better.
I mean, yeah. Which we kind of spoke on like last week, Josh. We didn't record it, because it was more of a personal conversation. But the idea that desire within humanity is what has enabled us to grow to the point that we're at now, with like technology and shit. However, it is also inherently linked to being unhappy, because the desire to have something more means that you lack something now, from a like Buddhist kind of perspective, that in order for you to desire something, then that means that you have to acknowledge that there's something about you that needs to be fixed, or
something that's missing.
Or something that is missing. And the acknowledgement of that is unhappiness. And usually that pain is what propels that desire for you to get something better or greater. So in the case of a marriage, then that is inherently self-destructive, because the human desire of, well, this person's hotter than my spouse, this person's funnier than my spouse, this person's more, yada, yada, yada than my spouse. So I want to be with that person, not understanding, or rather discarding the obligation that you have to your kids and the happiness that plays into your life as well. So that's why I said earlier, I feel like a lot of marriages that end up in divorce aren't because of toxic situations to where one spouse turns into this, monster, but rather human desire playing its natural part of I want something greater than what I have now, despite what I have now being, well off enough. So
I see.
All that to kind of say, yes, I think soulmates with an S exists. I don't think a soulmate exists. I think that is an incredible weight to place upon a person. To say, hey, you are supposed to be perfect for me. And any mishaps that you may have along your way disqualify you as my soulmate. Therefore, I must find someone that is more perfect for me. It is a never-ending quest. Versus the gradient of 85 to 100. They may fall from a 97 to a 92. Shit, you still a soulmate. They may fall from a 92 to an 86. Shit, you still better than fucking, I don't know how that translates to percentiles, but I guess better than 86% of the available population to me. So, that's well off. It's the kid that's like in class that has a 97 on his test, but he's pissed. Meanwhile, there's people that have a 55 and are struggling. And they're like, fuck, how do I get a 60? How do I get a 65? So at some point.
Yes, as my professor said, C's get degrees.
So, everybody wants an A.
Right.
But the perception of the A, man, A, honestly, look, okay, this is going to sound incredibly humble, but I love how my mind works. So with our thirst for short-term mountain climbers, then we use that grading scale of soulmate on the short term versus from a projected long-term kind of thing, meaning that like short-term fun, a person may be a 96. Oh shit, okay, 96, okay. Shit, we up here. All of a sudden they stop calling, they stop texting, start ghosting a little more. But you still holding on to that 96 in your head. You aren't actively judging them based upon what their current state is. So they could be a 42 now, but in your mind, you're still holding to that 96 regard based upon that short mountain climb that you had.
Okay.
So you don't disqualify them because you're holding on to that little, but what we had was incredible in the moment versus how they performed over an extended period of time.
Gotcha.
And short-term gratification never allows us to truly assess a person because we fall in love with the ideal of what they used to be versus who they are now. That's why people always getting back with their exes and shit and expecting something different. When it's rarely something that works out well for either party.
That was some knowledge right there. Jesus Christ.
Hey, we dropping bars, baby.
My goodness.
That's also why looking at pictures of some of my L's makes me feel a little bit better now. The image reboots.
True. But that's also why there was this one post that was on Twitter that my boy sent me. Hold on, let me see if I can find it real quick. To where so the listeners at home, y'all won't be able to actually see this, but I'm gonna post it here in the actual chat here for you boys, so you can enjoy that. But that shit made me laugh Because that happens often, right? Especially
You said this one before.
especially to us guys, man. You know, we'll just be going about our day.
It always.
We'll just be going about our day, and then the thought of like the one chick,
minding his own business.
you know, the thought of the one chick that was a 95, but we just never pulled the trigger on, and it just kind of eats away at you a little bit. Like, fuck, I should have tried to see if that was going to stay at 95, if it was going to drop, but now I don't know. So
Now you'll never know.
So there's a difference, I think, between the assessment of someone as a 95 and never starting, and then holding on to that rating because you don't have any external information to invalidate that, versus being in a situation with someone and then it being a 95 and devolving into a 42 in front of your eyes, but you're holding on to the 95. Those are two different things. But more often people fall victim to the second than the first. So the first, you know, we've all been through, to where you're kind of playing the back in your head and you're like, fuck, I should have done something with that. Versus some falling apart and then, you know, you being delusional and trying to encourage yourself that it never fell apart in the first place, even though you know it did. But I mean, yeah, did y'all have any other, like, you know what I'm saying, questions, segues? Dope combo.
No, I think I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
We are always at 100 here, of course.
Hey.
No better match, really, than listening to us here. No better match than the people on here either, really. You know.
Hey, shit, we stay at 100 over here. True.
Yes, and Shaq has no problem taking applications to see what your number's at.
I mean, yeah, I will.
He will provide feedback and inappropriate.
He said applications on the website right now. If you just go to www.whiskeywisdom.com.
You know, right? Go ahead and move over to the compatibility quiz tab. And
now the hilarious part is we went through a compatibility quiz once, but it was very particular and very specific for sex. That's an old episode, but you know we've finished with this idea before.
You know,
Gotcha.
But yeah, so with that convo in mind, though, Josh, did your stance shift? Is it still the same? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, so my stance, I feel, definitely shifts with taking all of that into consideration. Because I was just thinking about like what I've seen, you know, happen, you know, with some of my people that I knew in high school, or people I've seen, you know, go through college and stuff like that. Just speaking off experience from what I've seen from them. So that definitely puts a lot of stuff in perspective because you don't know, you know, kind of everything that goes.
I mean, yeah, it is. It is very easy to try to self-assess a person's relationship from the outside and say, "Oh, those, you know, they look like a 94."
Master.
You know,
And I fail at it every time.
Meanwhile, you know, they're a fucking 73 holding it together when they're out. So, look, I take solace in the fact that when my wife meets me, she's going to be blown away. I take solace understanding that, you know, whoever the fuck she like dabbling with right now, so be it. But when she meet the kid, it's a wrap. is Kurt.
I think you're actually starting to argue against your point, but well, I like the energy though. I like that. That's what adds to your number.
Look, hey, we come through bad '90s, boys. That's why. Hey, well, look.
He said it has nothing to do with some mystical or some.
Yes.
Yes.
All I'm saying
I am putting in work to get to 90.
All I'm saying is I'm batting 90s. So whoever I wife up is going to be in the 90s.
You're mixing sports metaphors again.
I'm batting 90s. Well, no. Actually, wait. I can't say that. I am batting what I'm batting. But when I meet a 90 that I wife up, I'm just gonna shut up. I'm getting tired.
Shaq's doing okay, listeners. All right, you don't worry about Shaq. Shaq's doing him. That's all you need to know.
Jesus Christ! Welcome to the dichotomy of the podcast, Josh, where I'll spit bars for the better part of half an hour, and then just ramble on through my ego and contradict myself for 10 minutes.
Oh man.
But yes, I think that is easy to try to self-assess a relationship from the outside, either low-ball it or high-ball it. But generally what happens is, people that are in marriages for an extended period of time are hovering in their 70s and 80s. But understand that happiness isn't just about being with their partner, but the entire lifestyle that comes with that. The kids, the family, keeping everything neat and clean kind of vibes. Versus the inherent chaos that I believe comes with introducing new partners to raise kids, or introducing third families to be a part of the family. I think a lot of people, especially as you were kind of alluding to in older days, picked one and stayed with it. Whether it be for lack of options in in their town, understanding, well, hey, I picked John, so we gonna have to make this shit work because everybody else in the neighborhood know that we together, and I can't really get with nobody else. So, I guess we just gonna do our thing. Versus nowadays, the dating marketplace is global. So, I may have married John, but fuck it, Britt in Utah, that motherfucker looking kind of.
I was hoping you would switch from talking about the female perspective to a male one, just so that when you took the pause, I'd be like, yeah, fuck it, I got broads in Atlanta.
Switching to like Monica, that's in Washington, versus Jane that I married in a small town in Virginia. Or Mariah out in California, talking about she's gonna treat me right. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot more landmines nowadays than there were back then, which I think makes it so much more difficult for relationships to, quote unquote, settle within a certain range, because the reachability of a potential 90 or 93 is so much more accessible.
You have more information.
Yeah, than it previously was, which brings me to the question of, now mind you, we just gonna keep it kind of light and quick. But do y'all think you'll be married once or more than once?
I think once. However, to be completely honest with you, I do sometimes worry that it's once, not just because it worked, like that it all worked, but because I am so dedicated or so let's say, stuck in the idea of making it work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want it to be once. My hope is that it's once. I think it should be once. Like that's all I'm aiming for. But I do sometimes worry about the fact that like I won't be able to see past like my own like the hand right in front of me kind of thing, or that like it's just it's honestly the same reason as to why I sometimes do wonder about like the first serious girlfriend I'll have, that like just be like, no dude, just like relax, take it slow, and see kind of like how all the things go. But yeah.
I also say once, just because, I mean, to be honest, I just want to be done. I just want to be done. I hate being out here. I cannot
He said,
deal
someone
with.
take me on these fucking streets. God damn it.
Like, come on. I'm so tired out here that I just I need to be done with it. I just being completely honest. And of course, you know, I'm gonna work at it, because you have to work at it, right? To find someone, and then, you know, when you meet them, you know, build the relationship and all that. But please, dear God, I am hoping for one time.
Okay. Yeah. Check.
Not again.
This time he put it on while we're recording too.
He said, someone please take me on these fucking streets, man. God damn, it's cold. It's cold out here.
It is. It's that cold.
Man, that's crazy. Cups of the
So
rose,
glad you played it again.
Cups of the rose.
But look, I mean,
Ugh.
well, you know, I've said before that I want 9 kids, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right. So there's going to be multiple.
Right. Yeah. So for the sake of efficiency,
Yes, that's right.
then I'm gonna need to have at least 3 to 4 concurrent wives.
Well, nowadays, you know, it could still just be one. You know, you just gotta be honest about that, Shaq. Don't lock yourself down, Shaq. You know.
Wait, concurrent wise, like at the same time? Or just like one right after the...
So one after the other would be consecutive.
Okay. Gotcha. Just checking my
Yep.
definitions
Yep.
here. So
For the sake of trying to achieve the best possible result,
Right.
you know, in project, you got to account for as many variables as possible
Correct.
for his heir. So he's hoping to do them all at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
I see.
or as close as possible to account for any exterior factors.
Right. You know, because I understand I'm probably gonna fuck up like the first 3 kids, right? So, you know, 4 through 9, I think have a pretty good shot, right? That I got 6 potential ones there. At least one coming out pretty good. You know, that I can pass off my like legacy onto.
What about the first 3? Are they just out in the water?
Well, you know, up to them. They can kind of pull in this, get, you know, file in line, kind of like squad. You know, MJ had a team behind him,
Right.
or they, you know, they can go out to different franchises. You know.
Right.
That's on them. You know, there's no force.
Yeah. You know, the only real pressure is going to be on the proper heir. Everybody else can just kind of do whatever. You know what I mean? But no. Yeah, I agree though, Nahum. The hope is one and done. The reality is
that one needs to go through 9 kids.
Is that the reality is that one has to survive 9 childbirths. Modern medicine should make that, a possibility, but
Now, mind you, listeners, we try to keep it real here. But who the fuck's gonna say 2 or 3 times on the recording? It just doesn't bode well for us. Talk to us once we're married, and then we'll be like, you know what, this is going pretty good. I stand by that one.
Once we're married, then we'll see where we're at with it. Can you imagine doing a live commentary while you're married saying, "Yeah, you're my second wife"?
It's gonna be so much better.
That is incredible disrespect.
Okay. Very quick question, because we can feel like that. Very quick question. Do y'all want to be the higher number in this kind of instance of how we were talking about? They don't have to be, necessarily the 100%. If you think the numbers can fluctuate or that the numbers can be different, sort of the whole like settling thing. Do you want to be the higher one or the lower one? How do you?
What the fuck is this question?
Like, would you prefer the idea that like you settled for the partner or that they settled for you? Like, they saw an 85 somewhere over there. They're like, no, I'm staying with Shaq. I see a 98, but I'm staying with Shaq.
My partner's going to be settling 10,000. 10,000%. My partner is going to be settling, and I'm sorry.
Do you want that to be the case, though?
I don't want it to be.
I sometimes
don't think
do.
anyone wants it to be the case.
Well, no. I sometimes like the idea of people seeing me be like, how what the fuck is going on here? Oh, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
She picked me? What can I say?
I guess for the sake of my ego, I'll say the higher number.
Okay.
But
that would kind of mean that you picked, like you settled like someone who was potentially okay.
Right. As in, like, I picked an 89. Even though there was a potential 95.
Okay.
You? What you doing?
I think on most days I would prefer that. The idea that I think on most days I would prefer the idea that I was the higher one. That they like that no one else comes along and it's like, no, they're a higher one, but I'm still going to stick with Nahum. I think I would on most days prefer the idea that like I was the highest number they ever got there. However, like I said, I would like the idea that at some point they're like, no, yeah, like, Idris Elba came by, but like, no, I'm sticking with Nahum. And be like, but why? Like, how the fuck did Nahum pull this off? And it's like, it's just being me.
Well, hey, that's a crazy different conversation. That we can have as far as the compatibility choices between men and women, but nevertheless, fantastic convo, Josh. Great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being on. It was a fun time.
Great questions. Hope you had a okay time.
Yeah, no, this was a lot of fun. Learned a lot, for sure.
You are one of the brave and direct souls, Josh, that came up to us and said you wanted to be on. And I thank you for that. It fills my heart with joy. I love to meet a fan. I love even more when a fan comes on, and it was a great time. It is fun.
But hopefully y'all, man, listen at home. I think this one was a banger. You know what I'm saying? I think there were some gems dropped in this.
100%.
That motherfuckers could definitely take back as far as the reassessment of their love lives or potential love lives. I think it takes a lot of pressure off of the situation for a lot of folks as far as trying to hit the bullseye with darts, when in reality, you could fuck darts is about it. But anyway, you could hit within a higher range than you think rather than hitting perfect. that ultimately can end up in a happy and successful life.
Actually, darts is not that bad, Shaq, because the inner bullseye is 50. And there's a number of other spots on the dartboard that are actually higher than 50, but still less than the top number.
True. I mean, yeah. You got the like triple spots and stuff like that.
Right. You know, so there's triple 20 and 60. There's 50 to 60. And if you're always going for the bullseye, you're missing everything from 51 to 60.
Yeah, but that's why I said that didn't work, because a bullseye, ideally, you would say it's a 99 or 100.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean? So anyway.
Okay, we'll cut this out.
Yeah.
We'll cut that.
The power of post-edit. But you hear what we want you to hear. But yeah, I think that it is an important conversation for people to make that are in relationships now, or that are looking at potential relationships, and being able to choose for a longer scale situation, if that's what you wish, and assessing it properly, or choosing for a shorter term situation and assessing it properly, but to maintain assessment throughout either one, to make sure that the compatibility is where, or is within a reasonable zone, and that if it's not, then act accordingly, and if it is, then act accordingly. But needless to say, great combos as always. Well, I'll let y'all next week. Peace.
Okay.